Hi, math friends. Today we're looking at another review for us, so let's go ahead and jump right into this. So we have first here completing the proportion, so we are trying to make the equivalent fractions here, right? So how do we get from like 3 to 42 if you're multiplying? So we're going to multiply by 14, and to show work for that, I'm going to go ahead and write times 14 here. You would do that on your paper as well, and times 14 here. So 2 times 14, we would get 28 equals x. I'm going to go ahead and circle my final answer there too. All right, next one, we get from 42 to x, 57 to 9.5. So one strategy for this is you can actually go ahead and divide that. And if you divide 57 and 9.5, you get 6. So I find out that if I divide by 6, I can go this way. All right, so I need to do 42 divided by 6, and I get x equals 7. And I can circle my final answer there. All right, determining a unit rate. So remember when we have a graph, we need 2 points on here. So I'm going to go ahead and find 2 points. So here's one, and right on that line, here's another one. I want to make sure it's exactly on that grid line. And then I can count my change in y over change in x. So this goes up 1. So my change in y, that's going to be equal to 1. And I want to know over my change in x. Use a different color for that. We're going to count 1, 2, 3. So change in x is going to be 3. All right, so our unit rate, we could write it as 1/3. You could go ahead and divide it and get 0.3 repeating. Either way would be acceptable for this when we're finding unit rate. So, you could say, hey, here it is, and that's equivalent to 0.3 repeating. So you could say that too. 112 over 7. So you could go ahead and divide them. So I'm going to use my calculator. 112 divided by 7, and I get 16. So we're going to say 16. Or if you want it if we specifically say unit rate, you could also put it over 1. So either way would be okay here for us. All right, now we're looking at from least to greatest here, and there was a typo here. This should have been -1 on your study guide, so apologies for that. When you're looking at this, we're looking at for change in y over change in x again. So change in y here, this goes down by 5. And then if I go from -10 to -15, that goes down by 5 again. And another time it decreases by 5 yet again. So that means that my change in y is going to be -5. All right, so over my change in x, let's see what happens here. From -1 to 0, this is a +1 this time. 0 to 1, +1. And same thing here. So this is -5 over 1. If you divide them, you're going to get -5 as your slope there. So we're comparing the slopes of these. Number 2, or the graph, same as the one we did before. So we want to find 2 points on this line and count my change in y over change in x. So I'm going to have 1 over, let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 over 5. If I divide that so I get a decimal, so that they're easier to compare at the end, I'm going to get 0.2. And then the last one, remember, this is going to be like y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to write that on top here just so we can remember that. Mx plus b. So I have to find where m is because m is the slope, so that's 2, 6. So I'm going to go ahead and top to bottom, 2 divided by 6. I get the same as 1/3. I get 0.3 repeating. All right, so then I'm going to go from least to greatest. So what's the lowest one? The lowest here is actually the table because that's a -5. And then next is going to be the equation. Oh, sorry. Nope, the graph. I was looking at that wrong. And then the last one is the equation. So once we have those as just numbers -5.2 and 0.3 repeating, we can list them in order as well. All right, two different forms of linear equations. So one was y equals kx. So this one uses the constant of proportionality. And that was one that we saw in a lot of equations. The other kind is y equals mx plus b. And that's going to be slope intercept form. So we have the slope and the y-intercept there. Define all the different types that represent slope. So how did we represent slope? Well, we represented it as k, and y equals kx. We also identified it as m as slope. We also said change in y over change in x. That was one that we talked about the most because that's how we calculate it. And we could also say like the rise or fall over the run. This is another common way that you'll see it in textbooks going forward too. So we should know that. And look how that's the same as the change in y, right? Change in y is vertical and change in x is horizontal, right? So those are some ways that we could definitely see it. All right, number 8 talks about Valerie and Marco and their family going on trips. Valerie's family traveled at an average speed of 48.75 miles per hour. Marco's family traveled at an average speed of 54.5 miles per hour. Write the slope, rate of change as a ratio for each. All right, so Valerie, well, how fast did they go? 48.75 miles per hour. So we could say it like that. You could put it over 1. If we write it as a ratio here, as it says. All right, and then Marco's, so same idea, 54.5, and then over 1. All right, and then we want to know for distance traveled, and then like how far do they go based on the time. So here to start, we're going to go with 48.75. And then multiply it by the number of hours we have, so times 0. So answer we get is 0. If you don't go anywhere, if you spend no time moving at that, you don't go anywhere. All right, next one, 48.75. You're going to multiply it by 1, so you should get 48.75 here. Next one, same idea, but times 2. So 48.75 times 2. You're going to get 97.5. All right, and then look really carefully. There's not a 3 there. There's a 4. So we're going to say 48.75 times 4. We get 195. And then same idea for the last one, except it's times 6. So 292.5. All right, and then same for Marco's family here. Showing work here is important too, so make sure that you write it, even if it's times 0. Oh, sorry, his should be 54.5. So we get 0 there. And then let's go ahead and look at if we multiply by 1. 54.5 times 1. And we do get 54.5. And so on. So if you want to make sure that you did these right, this is a great video to make sure that we're doing all of this correctly. So we got 109 for that. And then let's look at the next one. We got 54.5 times 4. We get 218. I need to change that color there. I like to use different colors so they stand out better in each slot here. And then the last one is times 6. And we are almost done with this review. There were a lot of skills in this, so if this review is a little bit all over the place, yeah, we studied a lot of skills in this unit. So we get 327 there. All right, let's take a look at the very last part here. It says to write an equation. So if we have the slope and we know that that's 48.75 again, so we can write that as y equals mx plus b. And remember, for 0, it was 0. So if you want to put plus 0 here, you can. But the y-intercept is 0, so we don't have to. All right, and then the other one, 54.5 x. Oh, I meant to put x over here. My bad. All right, the last one says representing each line. So looking at them carefully, like Marco's has a higher speed. So his is going to increase quicker. So we're going to put Marco up there. And then this y2, the one that's lower, that's actually going to be Valerie. So I'm going to go ahead and write Valerie. All right, so I hope that helps. And yeah, use that to study from, work well from, and you can do it.